back. This is the fourth and final video in the 4-part series of making this doll, Nova. In this video, I'll be making a wig out of alpaca hair. I prefer to use alpaca since it's thin and soft and makes a great scale of hair for dolls to fit proportionally. It's also very easy to dye, style, and work with, and overall cheaper than some alternatives, while also being completely natural. Without further ado, let's jump into the fiber processing and wig making process. I have a favorite alpaca hair seller on Etsy whose shop is called Woolydelight. They have great customer service, awesome products, and decent prices with fast shipping times in the US. I'll leave a link to their shop down in the description. The fibers that I buy are raw and unprocessed, so I'll be showing you briefly the steps in which I prepare it for use before making the wig, as well as the wig making process. You can see how the fibers are received essentially shaved right off the alpaca, and what they will look like once they're cleaned and dyed. In order to get it to that point, there are a couple steps that we need to follow. I start by separating out the hair into sections or clumps, tying the ragged end with a thin rubber band to keep it in place for the next few steps. Otherwise, it will just tangle into a big blob in the water. I like to take a big piece like this and separate it all out into sections at one time so that I have quite a bit of material to dye later on. You can see that I still have plenty left for later on since I ordered 4 ounces. I wash the hair in a bowl with shampoo to clean it up and then rinse it out with a sprayer in the sink to get as much dirt and bits out as I can. You can see how white they all look brushed out now, and I can rinse them again and dye them, which I like to do at the same time. I just use regular old fabric dye for this since it gets the most vibrant color, and you can simply follow the dyeing instructions to dye the hair. I like to do several batches of dye at once, since it has to be cleaned up after, and here I mix the dye to get the colors that I want. It's also important to note that when the hair is put into the hot dye, it often breaks the rubber bands, which is super annoying, but I haven't found another way to keep them together yet. I just add another rubber band so that the fibers stay together for the next few steps. I brush out the fibers once again, and for brushing the alpaca, I use a metal cat comb since this is nice to detangle the thin fibers. I then use my straightening iron and some soft hair treatment spray to straighten or curl the pieces and make them nice and smooth. Sometimes I do just leave the raw fibers brushed out too. It depends on the look that you want. I left some of the fibers without being straightened so you can see the comparison. Now that the fibers are all ready, it's time for the wig, which I do a little bit differently since I don't create an actual wig cap necessarily. I can be somewhat impatient, and making the wig this way is a lot faster. I start by layering up saran wrap 3 times, and I'm using red saran wrap here since it's easier to see what I'm doing. I lay it over the doll's head, pressing it down and securing it in place with a rubber band. I then use a pen to map out where the hairline is, and then where I want the part to be, and in this case where I want to put the bangs. Bangs are very tricky with this thin hair, but it was what I had in mind, so I went with it. I then take a chunk of hair and chop the top off where the tangled hair and the rubber band is. Then I separate a small piece from the chunk and splay it out thinly within my fingers. You don't want the hair to be too thick since there will be several layers of the wig as you move up the head. I'm starting with the bangs, applying a short line of hot glue, and then laying the end of the hair down and pressing it gently into the glue. It's best to use finger protection here, just in case you get the hot glue on your fingers, but I've done this enough times now that I know how hard to press and what to do if I do get glue on my fingers. Then I use the hot nozzle of the glue gun while holding the fibers below to gently secure the ends of the hair down in place against the plastic wrap. This takes a little bit of practice to get down without ripping the hair off or using more glue. I also tend to spray down the hair as well to keep static away as I go, working my way around the edge of the hairline and up layer by layer. If you want a more detailed look at the entire gluing process of the wig, let me know in the comments. Once the wig is finished and I've given enough time for the glue to fully cure, I can remove the wig. I start at the corners, gently plying up to release the glue in saran wrap until I can take off the back of the head to make it easier. Then I go around in circles, gently prying so that I don't end up ripping the glue or the saran wrap and making a hole in the wig. It should pop right off in the end. Then I go around trimming away all the excess saran wrap around the edges, being careful to move the hair away so that I don't cut it in the process. Then I place the wig back on using glue dots to keep it in place, just like I do with the eyes, and I can then trim the wig into shape. I ended up having to spray the bangs with hairspray and cover them with saran wrap and leave it so that they would dry and stay in the right position after I cut them. I give the back a trim and then add a bow to the top and a tiny barrette that I found at a set in the dollar store. In the end, I decided to name this doll Nova. I've been fascinated by purple galaxy themes lately, and she just looked like a Nova to me. I think the repaint turned out great, and I'm thrilled to be able to say that I made this doll all the way from the very body itself. Someday, hopefully I'll be able to have said that I 3D sculpted it as well, but for now, I'm simply grateful to have access to such a great doll file. If you didn't see my first video in this series, I'll be leaving a link to the doll on Thingiverse, where you can check out the files, download them for yourself, and learn more about the users who did such a great job making the files to begin with. Thank you so much for joining me for the making of Nova. I plan on making further videos on how to draft a pattern for a new doll like this and be able to make clothes, but for now, I'm glad that you took the time to sit down and watch this series, and I hope you enjoyed seeing my process and maybe learned a thing or two on the way. Until next time.